This is Baruch Fleischman here at the Tikkun elevator Kollel, and it's time for what we call, our special shir today on the Zohar Parsha of the week, which is Parshas Bo, and this is the second day, the day of Gevurah. We're coming over to a period of time here that we're wanting to learn about a little bit because the Litvish yeshivas, as I said before, it's just like not available. Nobody knows it's there. So this period, which is a period of 6 or 8 weeks, and let's just read this little blurb to get started. Shovavim is a period of 6 to 8 weeks each year. So we're talking about this word Shovavim, which he said is also the concept of being a mischief maker or a prankster, mischief maker, in which some Kabbalists teach one should focus on repenting for one's sins. And here's the important part, particularly sexual sins, which we tend to try to put under the rug and not think about. But the Kabbalists do. Let's go over here and let's see about some of the ideas. He says during the practices there are people who fast. If you're Bezer v'chosav, we don't fast. If in prayer, to spend extra time praying, and tinus deep, or something that a lot of people do, they just don't talk. They take a certain period of time where they speak not at all. Some people don't speak at all through the whole 6 to 8 weeks. We'll get to the practices in a little more detail, and there's some other places to look, but let's go over to the Zohar. The reason why I'm bringing this is because as I'm reading the Zohar in this particular period of time, and I see that there's a lot of problems, and we're addressing ourselves through them. Yesterday, we talked about the relationship between the Satan and the Kodesh Baruch Hu, where Kodesh Baruch Hu offered Iyuv to be handled by the Samach Mem instead of the Jewish people. Now, here we are on page Shem Men Ches. We're going to start reading over here, see if we can get this going. So he said, Mefarish as the Indian Ba'ama, so he explained this subject, and he says like this, V'tochaze b'shata the Amma, so come and see at the time that this was said. Now what? Ba'varei b'shah she'amar ha'satan l'kodesh baruch hu. Now the Kodesh, at the moment that the Satan spoke to a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and he said these words, Mishut ba'aretz, I was flying over the world, over the land. He says that I was flying over the land of Yisrael, and what he wanted to do, he said, he wanted to punish the Jews. So now he stood before a Kodesh Baruch Hu, as if it's possible to say this, and he made this claim, punish the Jews. The Hodina Havale al Avraham the Misbah Mekutra Baricha, because there is a leftover din by Avraham Aveinu that they need to be punished for. Ki koyulo din v'tain al Avraham the Vakesh ma Kodesh Baruch Hu. That's what he was claiming. That's the major claim that the other side had. Begin to lo Yisa'abed dinah beYitzchak kad iskri bal gabe madbachol. He said the fi shalom na'aseh din beYitzchak. He didn't carry out the din with Yitzchak. Kusher nisgrav al mizbeach, when he was placed and offered on the altar. Kamasha Kosav, like it's written like this: Hinei ayel acher, he found another ram, v'alehu le'olatach beno, and he offered the other ram instead of Yitzchak. The whole lo habalei la'achlo v'carbon the azbein al madbeka ba'achlo. The Tana Satan, this is the claim of the Satan. Ki lo choyelo la'avraham la'hachlif as a carbon. He should not have switched out the carbon. Shehechin al mizbeach v'carbon acher, for within that he had prepared and had placed Yitzchak on the altar, he's going to say, and everything was ready to go. And then he, at the final moment, he brought in another one, that is an actual ram. Because this is a pasuk, you shouldn't switch it. Shein lahachliv shum carbon. That is where it's forbidden to switch a carbon. Let's say I have this lamp today, and I'm about to offer it, and I said, no, switch it out. I'm going to go with this other one. You're not allowed to do that. So here we see that Yitzchak was placed on the altar. Lo ishtali minei carbano. V'lo v'isabed beidin. The Kan Kabar had Yitzchak Munach al Gabi on Mizbeach. It was already on the Mizbeach. But the carbon was never completed. Now, the offering was never completed. But Naasebo did. So the din that Abraham had set out to be able to address didn't happen. So now the Satan is coming before a Kodesh Baruch Hu, And he's actually making this claim before Kodesh Baruch Hu. But let's say that in fact Avraham Aveinu killed Yitzchak. He shechted him. And the Sarban, this is hard to hear. He says the Satan is missing his portion. What portion would he give to the Satan? Because the Satan wants a portion of every carbon. V'ata sheyitzchak no nishchat, Eina Satan wrote to them al chelko shahoya roilo. He doesn't want to forgive the debt that is owed to him that would have been a part of the shechting of Yitzchak. Okay, yesh to the says lo as chelko. So now he has this claim. He wants the portion that is offered to him, shahoya megilo im Yitzchak hoya nishchat, that was owed to him if in fact Yitzchak was shech. So we say, well, whereas we know like this, at the time of the Akeida, the Kriyas Yamsuf, so he says, Ad Kriyas Yamsuf, so between those two times, from the time of the Akeida and the Kriyas Yamsuf, Avru Harbe Doros, I mean, a lot of water went under the bridge. Ain't Hasatan Mubater Mechelko Klum, but during all of that time, the Satan never gave up his claim. Kamad the boy Dine the Yosef the Kamadari. Kamosha Metzina Shabikesh Din Va'onesh al Mekiras Yosef, because he never forgot the sin of selling Yosef. And the Sultan wanted his portion from that. The Kaaba Habedoras, that took many, many generations. Until it came to the secret of the 10 Harugi Malchus who were killed. Actually, the Romans brought this whole thing up, and they punished them. So everything that the Satan now is complaining about and claiming, because the claim is on the proper din. From that moment when Yitzchak was saved, and he wasn't sacrificed, and his carbon was switched out to the ram, his mean V'heichin HaKodesh Baruch Hu l'sada. So the Kodesh Baruch Hu then prepared. He invited the Satan, Hamektarg as Iyuv l'chelko, that he should take Iyuv, who is being now accused, let that be his portion. So this is the background of that. There's a lot of claims that the Satan has that we just pass them by, we don't pay attention to them. Kamatat Amar, like you say like this, Yolda Milka Gamhi. So the Milka is the we learned this yesterday. Well, let's see what the Matuk says. He says, as Utz B'chara. So he says, Hainu Iyu. That is the wife of Avraham's brother. Had this child called Iyu, in Be'eretz Iyu, Be'eretz Utz. The Pasuk Zen Ememiyad Afra Akeida. So this Pasuk is actually said immediately. The time sequence of this Pasuk is immediately after the binding of Yitzchak. The Yoshe Iyu Koyu Gam came Ben Beno Shal Tarach. Kamal Yitzchak. So he's also a grandson of Tarach, just like Yitzchak. His Minu HaKodesh Baruch Hu L'chelko. So therefore HaKodesh Baruch Hu prepared him to be for the portion Shalasantim. Temuras HaChelik Shechoyu Roi L'Kaba B'Karbanu Shal Yitzchak, corresponding to the portion that he was supposed to get from Yitzchak. Now let's understand the principle that he's saying like this. He says like this: in every carbon there's a certain amount of waste that goes to the Satan. So every carbon he expects that. And then you have Ram Kippur, and he gets all the sins of the Jewish people placed on the Zazel. He gets all of that too. That's his badge of honor. So over here he's not getting it, so he's holding it all this time. So what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? He gives him the equivalent of Abraham. He gives him Iyuv. For here, so now the Sultan is taking his portion. Mishpachas Avraham, that comes to him from the Akeida that was supposed to happen in the family of Abraham, and Iyov is from the family of Abraham. Because the Kodesh, but the Satan wanted one of the family of Abraham, whoever it would be. V'lav davka mizara l'chein, not didn't have to be from his particular family. L'chein nimser iya biyado didn't mean that his family that came from Rivka, and so on and so forth, but it meant from the original family of Abraham. V'lo yikrav be sitra akra, v'lo yikrav o the sitra akra tarav zera Abraham, and as a result of this, the sitra akra stopped accusing, and he no longer started to accuse it, continued to accuse the Jews. V'kula bedina asa, v'okol naasa bedin, and everything was done properly in the way that it was supposed to be done. So he said the Zohar goes on a little bit more, and it says like this. Let me get this lined up a little bit better. There we go. V'atim mefarish, so now it explains. Ki sof ma'chata Iyuv. So in the end, sof. What was in fact the sin of Iyuv? That he was chosen to become the portion that goes to the enemy, the Satan. Mikol Mishpachas Avraham. Why was he chosen from all the rest of the family of Avraham Aveinu? Is done because there's a rule. When a person does judging, then he also gets judged by the same meter that he judges others. Begin the Iyuv Makriv Eita the Parahava, because Iyuv was close to Paro, and he brought Paro a bit of strong advice. The Fisha Iyuv Koyel Miotza Krovim El Paro, Vakad Kom Paro Laichon, when Paro stood up to Yisrael and came after the Jews, Boil Katlon. He wanted to kill out the Jews, a tremendous massacre. We've seen it before. So he stood up against the Jews. And he said these words, let's come and do something wise, lo. So he wanted to kill them. That's what he meant to say. But Iyuv stepped in and he said like this to Paro, lo, don't do that. Al tasike. Ella told mimamonehan, take from their money. And then control their bodies, enslave them. Don't kill them. Just control them. Take everything they have and make them as if they were dead, because they'd be so poor. Let's read the Matav Alakach as Mammon, take their money, V'sishlosh al gufam, take control of their bodies, but avoid the kosher with such hard work. V'lo tahara goes on, don't kill them. Amalei Kush Baruch Hu said to him like this: the Iyuv, Chayecha, I swear, Bahachu dinim mamash tehedai, that you will be judged by that din that you put on the Jewish people. B'chayecha ba'usecha b'din shedanta tehiyeh nidon, you'll be judged the same way. Machsiv. So then, what did it says? Ulam shalach na yadacha v'gala es atzman al basara. So this is a quote from Iyuv. He said, Pirish. So try to remove him from the pains that he have in his body and his skin. Don't mean to say like this. The Hilo, Eved HaKadosh Baruch as B'mono. So first, HaKadosh Baruch Hu took away Iyuv's money. Keneged Mashayah, it's the Paro. This corresponds to what the advice that he gave to Paro. Litol as Mamona, to take their money. So then he started to put in these burden masters. Likach as mamonim, in order one to take their money, but with different kinds of tax. I guess that was the word. Sorry, masim. Masim means a year in this case. It means taxes. Likach as mamonim, but masim of arnonios. So different kinds of ways to take their money through taxing. And the same, then after that, he also put him into tremendous pain. This is, we're talking about Iyuv now. Mitzrayim, as Yisrael Beparik, where it says that they placed tremendous burdens on the Jewish people and they suffered. I read, is done. So this is the ultimate conclusion of the Zohar over here. The same meter that he judged, he's judged. V'afal gav the bekol shar chavadachel the good jabarichu, and that even though we said that he was a God-fearing man and everything else. Afal shibashkar shar devarim hoya Yarem HaKadosh Baruch he was afraid of HaKadosh Baruch. In other words, he was God-fearing. Kamo Shahei, the love of HaKadosh Baruch, as HaKadosh Baruch who testifies on him. Shu each tam v'yasher v'yari elokem v'sar me'ra. That's who he is. He's a person who's pure, straight, and he fears God's judgments. V'sar me'ra, and he stays away from bad things. B'im kol zeh, lo nitzal midadin amagia lo. With all this, he was never saved from the din that was coming to him. This is Baruch Fleischman, and this has been the second day of the Parshas Bo. We're going to the period which we call Shovavim, and thank you for listening. Kol tov.